Are you a dice goblin?
This isn't what it looks like.
Are your friends concerned about your dice hoarding habits?
Hey guys! I'm so excited! Oh, yeah. Oh, got a few more. Okay. Let me just, can I? Yeah, go ahead and start. I'm just gonna pick these ones up. Okay. So excited for this. Okay. So last time a couple more. Okay. Yeah.
Do you feel judged about this perfectly reasonable hobby whenever you're around them?
Let me get you some cash for the pizza. That's not mine.
My colleague and I at Honor Roll Labs, well, we're not here to change you, but we know that your friends will never truly understand, and we've done the science to show that they'll be much more accepting if your dice hoard is well organized. We've come up with a scientifically proven method to make a dice bag, the result of which will have your friends utterly impressed, and most importantly, your dice hoard well organized.
All right, let's gather some supplies. You need a fat quarter of fabric, a fat quarter of lining, 48 inches of cord, and thread in whatever color you want. For templates, we have an 8 by 13 inch rectangle and a 4-inch circle. For tools, you'll need scissors or a rotary cutter, sewing pins and sewing needles. A sewing machine also helps, but you could do all of it by hand. You'll need a ruler. Don't forget the most important ingredient, mental fortitude. Or in my case, a grande Americano with almond milk. Okay, before we jump right in, take a measuring tape or your template and make sure this 13 inches, when it's folded into a circle with a 1/2 inch seam allowance, fits around the base of your sewing machine. If it doesn't fit with the 13 inches, just add a couple inches. Your dice bag will be a little bit wider, but it's still gonna look fine. Okay, now it's time to cut out the fabric. Using your template, cut out a rectangle and a circle from both the fat quarter of the outer fabric and the lining. In addition to the big rectangle and the little circle, you're also going to cut out 2 5-inch by 2-inch strips of the outer fabric. We're eventually going to make tubes of these, and it's what your cord is going to thread through. Take your large rectangles of lining and outer fabric, fold them hamburger style with right sides together, and pin along the short edge, the 8-inch edge. Take your smaller rectangles and fold the short edges over 1/4 to 1/2 inch and pin in place. The one thing you want to be sure about with these is that both of them are the same length. So once you pin one, use it to help you measure the other one and make sure that they're the same length before you stitch it all down. Now we're going to sew all of those edges we just pinned with a 1/4 inch seam allowance. There is no need to backstitch because we will be sewing over these lines again in the future. Yes, I was 30 years old when I discovered that you could just sew right off the edge of a piece of fabric and it won't ruin your sewing machine. Using a lot of pins, pin the circles to the bottom of the cylinders you just created. right sides together. Now is an excellent time to question all of the life choices that led to this moment. Now slowly stitch around the outside using a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Seriously, take it slow. This isn't a race. And if it is a race, well, this is another great opportunity to question the life choices that led you to a dice bag making race. Most of this video is sped up to save time, but here's an example of how slowly I'm stitching around the outside of this. Seriously, you'll thank yourself later, just do it slowly. When you're stitching around the lining, make sure to leave a 1-inch gap unstitched so we can turn the whole thing right side out when the time comes. Now you're going to turn the outer fabric right side out. Then you're going to slide it into the lining. Make sure the right sides are together here, that's how it should be. And then pin the top edges. This is where you begin to want it to be able to fit around your sewing machine, and it didn't fit around mine because I like to learn lessons the hard way. So I actually had to get out my older sewing machine, rethread that one because it has a smaller arm around which the bags could actually fit. So just do as I say, not as I do, and make sure it fits around before you start this whole endeavor. Now you're going to stitch around the top part of the bag that we just pinned with a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Alright, now you're going to turn the whole thing right side out through that little gap we left in the lining. Now you're going to stitch the lining closed by hand. I used a ladder stitch because it's nicely hidden and I find it to be fairly easy, but you can use whatever stitch you want. It doesn't have to be perfect since it's on the inside of the bag, but just make sure whatever stitch you use that nothing can fall into the dimension that exists between fabric layers. Now tuck that lining in and pin the top in preparation for a top stitch. This is optional. You could just press this top seam with an iron, but I really like the look of top stitching. It helps hold the lining down, and I will do anything and everything I possibly can to avoid using an iron, because I hate them. If you do choose to top stitch, you can use whatever stitch pattern or seam allowance that you want. Just don't go too fat because we've still got to sew the tubes on for the cord. I went with 5/8 inch seam allowance. Okay, grab those small rectangles again, and you're going to fold the long edges over about 1/4 inch. Like we did when we folded the first edge over, make sure that both are the same width. You can definitely use an iron to press these if your fabric isn't cooperating. Pin these to the bag about 1 inch down from the top edge. Stitch the long edges of these about an 1/8 inch to 1/4 inch seam allowance. Get as close to the edge as you can because these are essentially the tubes where the cord's gonna go. So you don't want them to be too tight. Then you'll do the same with the second one on the other side of the bag. My trick to get placement just right is to fold the bag flat and feel for where the first one is and line the second one up with it, just by feel, and pin it in place. Make sure when you're pinning these, of course, that you don't pin all the way through to the other side of the bag. No bueno. Use a safety pin or a threader to send the cord lengths through the tubes. Make sure that they're going opposite directions, knot the free ends together on either side of the bag. And there you have it. You have your own dice bag. It'll protect your hoard, keep them organized, keep your friends from judging you. I like to make them to match my characters and my dice sets. They also make fantastic gifts for friends and family. They also hold an entire pound of dice, I've learned. If you like this tutorial, please consider giving it a thumbs up and subscribing to my channel. I like to post D&D and cosplay and other DIY and nerd-related videos. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye! It's not your turn.
It's not your line.
So, last time...
We've come up with a scientifically proven... Are you doing science?
Some cash for the pizza.
Why did you turn your hand?
I don't know.
You're like, oh, it's going perfectly. Fling.
I don't know. Oh, that magic camp, huh? Some cash for the pizza.
Go about your business giving out the cash like completely normal transaction.
Turns out I don't have any, so let me get you some cash for the pizza. I can't grab the dice.
Like I said.
Whoops. That's mine.